Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome to Limitless Live. I'm going to be your host today, Limitless Minds family. It's me, it's Dr. J. It's been a minute since I've been on a live, but I'm happy to be back and to see you all, and hope everybody is enjoying their June and July. So today I have a really special guest for you all. If anybody's already tuning in, please let me know. Pop a hello in the chat. I love to know who I'm talking with today and who gets to experience live our awesome special guest. Okay, so our guest today, folks, she's a game changer in the industry of personal and professional development. She is the CEO and founder of the Flourish Consultancy. What a name. And a respected philanthropist and a recognized community leader. She has a background in psychology. Hi there, Heather. And what has really been impactful for me in getting to know her is her life-altering story of overcoming. And she's devoted herself after that to bridging the gap between what we learn in conventional education and the essential life skills that we need to survive in our fast-paced world. So today, you get to join the ranks of folks in various industries, from education to hospitality to wellness to productivity, who have experienced this awesome trainer through her masterclasses and her wellness program. Please join me in welcoming Kimberly Stark.
You're going to make me cry.
Oh, well,
the introduction.
I could say
likewise. I mean, I have such a depth of respect for you personally and for your entire team and your entire team's mission. I just think it's like such solid people. And so I am just honored to like be here and have my favorite conversations with other people who have that these are their favorite conversations too. So
I'll tell you what, like the universe doesn't make mistakes, right, Kimberly? Like there was a reason we met, and there's a reason why you are an awesome special guest on one of our Friends and Family Fridays here on Limitless Live. We have Harry Wilson in the audience. We have Jeff, we have Heather, we have Jamie, Sophie. So we got a crew here. We have a crew here today that's come to hear us chat, and I love it. I knew, so fam that's here, the first time I met Kimberly, we were supposed to be talking about like a very specific like agenda item, and we met for over 30 minutes and I don't think we got like anywhere near it because we just started to talk, which tells me a couple of things. Number one, Kimberly's a talker like me. And number two, we had a lot in common that we could chat about. And so it was tough to narrow down, right? Like what we were going to talk about today.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we'll see where it goes too.
We're going to see where it goes. But I'm wondering, what I really feel compelled about, and having talked to you about what you do and also, who you are and what your life has been like, I'm wondering if you would do us the honor of telling us a little bit about your story and how you got to the point where you developed the Flourish Consultancy and the masterclasses that folks have benefited from.
Sure. Well, I started Flourish because I noticed a gap in the education between what we learn in conventional education. I had a college degree and what it actually takes to successfully adult. I got married when I was still in college when I got married. I had 4 kids in 5 years through my 20s. And it was during that time that I thought to myself, where was the class on this? Like I have a college degree, but I mean, there was so much that I was unprepared for, and we all are. We're unprepared for adulting. And so that's kind of the crux of where it started. So it was during that time that I began to just gather little bits of information and knowledge, whether from, podcasts were just getting started, blogs were just getting started.
Remember before podcasts?
Yeah, 20 years now. And so, but I gathered like physical, like whether it was notes from a book I read or a sermon or ripping out like articles from journals. And I filed them physically in my file cabinet, and it became Kim's life skills class. And I had no idea what it was. I was deep in motherhood and, all of the things that sort of entails. And that's where it sat for, no joke, probably 15 years. But as you and I were talking about before, that was a little acorn of the idea. And in launching into what I do now, it's important to tell a little bit more of my story, because I am not naive to the fact that, where I am now, I look like me, I live in Newport, and people are saying, what do you have to teach us about adversity? So it became important to say sort of what happened from there. So it was the fall of 2014.
Okay.
And I was a big journaler, like when I was growing up and in college. It probably started with my father's like morning prayer journal time. I think that's kind of where it started. And so I started this
habit got kind of instilled. Yeah.
And I'm still a huge proponent. So I stopped the entire time I was married. And probably part of it was just the craziness of children. And but in the fall of 2014, I started the writing practice up again. I had just realized that I was going through some things. I had gained 20 pounds. I had started smoking out of nowhere. And now I know that it was coping with a negative exposure to a lot of mental and psychological abuse in a relationship that I was in. So fast forward to, and during that time when I started writing, it sounded a lot like this. God help me. God help me. What do I do? I don't know what to do. God help me. What is even the matter with me? All of that. I didn't trust my mind, which is why I am so passionate about mental conditioning and mind work. And so fast forward to January of 2015, and I wrote in my journal this: I will not be a victim this year. Instead of believing that I was looking for the signs of what to do next, which is what I had always done, I began to believe that I was supposed to create my own, and I felt confident to do that. The irony of that statement is that within weeks of saying I will not be a victim anymore, I was an actual victim in 2 open cases in Orange County. The first was a physical assault in public, where someone saw and called the police. And at that point, I was left. My face had hit the ground, so I was left no wallet and no phone and no idea what had just happened and how much my world had just been broken apart.
Wow.
The second case happened less than 2 weeks later, and I was standing outside the grocery store looking at flowers, and someone tapped me on the shoulder and just said, "That guy just stole your purse." And I looked at my thing and I looked at her. My baby was in the cart, and I'm like, "Watch my baby." And I ran across the front. And this time I started yelling, "That guy just stole my purse. That guy just stole my purse." And sweet folks from the cafe down the street, 1 jumped up, 2 jumped up, 3. And all of a sudden they took him down. He ended up getting hit by a car.
Oh my gosh.
Scenario, the bad guy got hurt. And the second scenario, I was left with my things back and myself. That became the trajectory of sort of what happened next. From that point on, I became a single mom with no corporate experience, no access to my money, and had to essentially create an entire way forward. So that idea of adulting and building this life class took a completely different value to me. Yeah. Because we're stuck in these situations that, and I know you guys speak a lot to how to make the best better, how to make the great even greater, and really these high level performers. And I love that. And you do that so powerfully and so well. Where my heart really exists and what Flourish exists as a mission to do is what happens when you're in these situations that you did not want to be in, you did not expect, you did not want to be in, and you think might actually be the one that takes you down. You're asking yourself, I may not actually make it through this one. Yeah. And so what can we give you? What did I, curate, or what helped me, but also what can we provide you with in these really hot button moments to give you not only you're going to make it, trust me, you'll make through, but actual building blocks of true resilience. And that's where Flourish sits in the market.
Wow. I mean, it's such a tremendous story. One of our room tilters, who you may have seen on here, Kimberly Colin Henderson, he says victory goes to the vulnerable. And I see you being victorious. And I know because we've talked about like how you've chosen to turn this pain into purpose in your life. And it's so powerful for you to share that, because the differences between those two incidents that you shared was the agency, right? The agency that you took.
So you just said two things. Number one, perspective. So in our model on building resilience through adversity, the first thing is perspective. It's an actual belief in changing our beliefs, and not a false positivity, but an actual realization that post-traumatic growth exists. You now believe that any adversity that comes your way, you can utilize it for your strength, growth. And I know we've talked about, like, in working with clients, what are some of the things that can potentially stop resilience or stop a person moving forward? And
yes, I want our crew to hear this. So Kimberly, as you all have now heard, Lane here in the chat. Hi there, Lane. We have a room tilter, Krista Ryan, who has a phrase LFG. Let's freaking go. Or no, she has a KFG, keep freaking going, right? Like that's her resilience mantra. He's saying you have KLSC, Kim's life skills class. Well, Lane and everybody else that's here, like, okay, so Krista knows from whence, or Kimberly knows from when she speaks about resilience. And so I was asking, I want to know from you, you've lived it, you train it, right? In industries, with organizations, with individuals, resilience. So I wanted to know, like, what do you see as an obstacle in today's, in professional environment of building resilience, or of like taking that step towards turning that adversity into an opportunity? Like, what do you see as a major obstacle there?
Well, I think it could possibly be two different questions. The question of what do I think is an obstacle of taking adversity and changing it into resilience and this catalyst for growth and change, and actually putting you on your trajectory to make impact. Number one is education. When someone goes through any sort of trauma, what it is it's a shaking of their core belief systems, what they knew to be true. And you can speak to this more than I can. And so when that happens, it's terrifying. It's a lot of, it's uncomfortable, but it's like
a worldview shift.
It is. And so especially if you had this idea of what you thought to be true was true, but now you have a conflicting truth that you're trying to make sense of. Yes. And so for the one, I think it's that core belief that needs to be shifted on actually believing and knowing that it's completely possible to take the adversity, not only, I'll get to that in a second, but it's completely possible to take whatever adversity comes your way and utilize it for growth and change. And I'm not saying that it's here for, that's why it's here. That's, I think, a dangerous thing to say, because we're humans living a human experience, and there's some things that are just going to be sad and hard. But you can use it for that. You can use it. And unfortunately, there is no wisdom, growth, maturity, strength without walking through some things. You can't get there in any other way. So to answer your second question, the obstacle that can hold people back is comfort. If I was in a very happy, like, not even happy, because I was happy the whole time, but if I was in a comfortable position in my relationship and life, then I would have never started Flourish. Think about it. Flourish, like Kim's life skills class, lived for 15 years,
in a file cabinet. It wasn't until your comfort started to unravel. That you had to dig deep and pull out the files.
That's right. Yeah. And okay, so let's take that even more. So a little more of the story is that, so when I hadn't been in corporate America, and just so those of you who can relate to this, like, it's an entire language. It's a written language. I
can attest. I came to corporate America I came more to industry from academic medicine. And although both are pretty kind of like, they have their own structure, it was like learning an entirely different language.
I have a college degree and I'm sitting at this table and I speak English and I know they're speaking English, but I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. I can't tell you the length of my glossary of terms that I'm like, just smile and nod and look it up later. Like you're going to figure it out. Yeah.
So going back into the space, pitching myself into a first corporate position after being out, and then
as a single mom, who's been kind of like, financially cut off from
100% in one day. And I had them full time, during this time. And so it was fast. And to your point, I mean, and this is what I want people to know. I am where I am right now, and I present in the way I do right now, but I know what it's like to use food stamps. I know what it's like to have children sleeping on mattresses on the floor. I know what it's like to have, honestly, it was the gift of a flood in my kitchen. And they tore up the floor and I used the flood money to buy back to school supplies and shoes for my kids and lived with an open floored kitchen for 2 years when finally I had another flood that ended up paying for it. So like, I know the desperation that humans, Americans, all of us, can potentially feel when you're stuck in a situation where you feel like this.
You say like when you're in the vice.
When you're in the vice, I know I had written that. And because I remember telling I remember telling my dad, like when I was in the middle of this, like, Dad, it feels like I'm stuck in that thing. Remember in the garage that was like on your workbench? And he's like, the vice. I'm like, yes, that's what it feels like. It's squeezing.
I want to just share real fast, like, Lane's kind of saying it, resilience is such a superpower. It is like, I want to bridge a little bit, like what you said earlier with like what Limitless Minds, what we do and what you do. Like, so there is this distinction from like kind of helping to up level the already great to the elite with kind of like bringing, both you and I have been in positions in our life where we needed to come back to functioning, right? Like before we could get up to what we know we're capable of, high performance. So there is a distinction, but there's a big commonality there too. The things that help high performers continue to be great and get great and manage success without like losing their ability to maintain that. There's some Venn in that diagram about what's going to help you when you're in the vice and what helps you when you're great. So I love that. Like, I think there's this synergy here. And I'm curious for anybody that's here today with us in the chat, like what you think about that. Like, what are the overlapping areas between what's going to help you when you're at your lowest and what helps you when you're at your highest, right? Yeah. Because although there are distinctions and there are differences and the needs are not totally the same, there's a thread. And I think resilience is one of those threads. Like, these specific skills that keep you going don't have an expiration date.
And you use them, and to your point, you keep using them.
Yes.
So the sort of building blocks of building actual resilience are what we've been talking about. It's perspective, shifting your perspective on hardship. And this is what we work with our clients on, shifting your perspective on hardship, owning your agency. Like, yes, your hardships can be redeemed, but you were the one who has to do it. And now
you might not have caused the problem, but you need to solve it.
You need to do it. And that means something to me, because I lived in a completely different mental framework, pre versus post those incidents.
That journal entry where you're like, I won't be a victim. There was your shift, huh?
Yes. And that's what's so kind of weird about it, is like, you look at the writing, I don't know what happened that day, but that day, everything changed. And even all my writing changed. It was like, maybe it's an aha. And this is why it's education. It's what you're committed to. It's what you guys are committed to. And to your, like, even taking this to a corporate space,
yes,
it matters, because you want your high performance and you're teaching them these skills, and to utilize the skills to continue to be resilient, to continue to be high performing. But what's going on in corporate America right now is that your employees have always had this. So companies never wanted to kind of look at it, or that was like your home life. But the adversity that your employees face have always had a measurable hard cost to the company,
Absolutely.
whether they looked at it or not. So now if we can come in and we can train these building blocks of resilience, or we can train how to help managers have these well-being conversations with their employees and to do it well, to be vulnerable, to upskill them to more of a coach, then we're actually creating higher profitability for the companies. And this is where I know you guys feel this probably too, but we're just ahead of the market. We're just ahead of the market on this. And so there's this little, like, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, there's this little rub that you feel because you have some clients who are visionaries and they're starting to bring it in and they get that connection. And now we have the data. I mean, well-being at work is somewhere back there, but like we have the actual research that shows the connection. But I feel like we're still in this place where we have to convince people, like it's going to be a thing. Every company's going to bring mindset training in. It's just a matter of,
and you're on, we're I think all of us are trying to bring this message, right? Like normalizing mindset training is a deep mission. And it requires so many, I almost want to call them evangelists, right? On mindset training, right? Like this is why it matters. This is why
there can't be enough of us. Like there's never enough of us because there's enough work. And this is why you hit corporate, because if you go in and why I decided to take this to corporate versus becoming an independent coach or something, but if you can bring it in, then we have a much larger impact on society to bring it in at that place.
And I also think about, I think from my perspective, Kimberly, like I am really interested in access and impact, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to work at Limitless Minds and love working here. And I really value the micro interactions at the same time. And so I was really struck by something you said about the high performers in corporate. Like the vice happens to them too. It's always been happening. Some of us have had like that public self and then what's going on behind the scenes. That was you too. I'm sure. I know when you were getting into those rooms and selling your product early on, like it, there were two yous, there were two faces, right? Like, and so I think it's so powerful to be able to offer folks who give so much of themselves to organizations, to offer them mindset training, to offer them these skills for resilience that they've always needed, that many of us have been using right along, but need cultivating and tending to. It's so important. And I know the people here with us agree, because our chat is blowing up, that Heather is saying that grit is one of those things. Matt Miller actually asked us, what helps you at your lowest that also helps you at your highest? And I think that's what Heather was responding to, or no, she said it right before. Marin Davis Willis is saying, resilience can also be adaptability. And include that mindset that you're talking about, Kimberly. And I agree, like adaptability is absolutely crucial. If you can't bend, you're going to break, right? So I love that. And Matt Miller is saying present moment awareness, just that ability, Kimberly, like, what do you think about this? Like to be able to take each moment as it comes, one moment at a time. That's something that can help you when you're at your best and help you when you're at your lowest. What would you say to that?
I would say the magic is being able to, we talk about something, and imagination is actually the next step after perspective, agency, imagination. Okay. So there's something called strategic foresight that's essentially creating these, in uncertainty is marked by novelty, which means you can't pull from the past, right?
Right.
What do you do when
you have no playbook?
How do you be resilient when you don't have a playbook, when you can't actually pull from the past?
Exactly.
So one of the concepts that is used, it started in the military and it's now can be used in business on the macro level, but it's also can be used on the micro level, like with your own lives, is this idea of strategic foresight. It's creating these imagined worlds forward, blowing the ceilings off and pulling from a little bit of like what you know, but but imagining forward and living in these imagined worlds in order to be strategic with what you do now. So the beauty is, can you exist? Can you create these worlds that you think may potentially be, or what you want, on a personal level? You can think about, what do I want, by answering the question of what's the most beautiful life I can imagine. Start there. In business, ask with your teams. On the other side of this, like, what's the best outcome, and create this imagined world. And then
visualizing. Would you say
it's visualizing?
Exactly. We talk and train on visualizing. Yeah.
Yes. And so probably just, same words with the same concept. But to go back to the question, is that I feel like the magic happens when you can imagine, when you can visualize a potential imagined world and start building towards that world and strategize towards that world. And at the same time, stay really present and make decisions about what you're going to do today based on where you want to be in that imagined world. But also, like they were talking about adaptability, it's fluid. So the stuff that's coming at you when COVID hit, like no one could have anticipated that, right? So you have to be aware in your present moment in order to take action while keeping that idea in mind. But here's another key part of it is you have these, like, and they're bigger than goals. You have these ideas of this imagined world, right? But you have to identify and acknowledge the micro steps that you're getting along the way, or else you miss them. And I did this for a long time. I created this imagined world and I made a lot of it come true. But what I wasn't doing is like looking for the firing up your RAS, your reticular activating system, to notice the little micro steps that you're achieving. And once I started doing that, there was things that I was missing because I didn't acknowledge, like, the little steps.
Exactly.
So the beauty is in both, I think.
I love that. And I love that you brought in, one of my favorite parts of the brain, the reticular activating system.
Is it?
I think that's so great because, it is true, when you're going through hell, you have to be able to deal with where you're at and remember that it's not going to be like this forever, in order to hold on to that hope that does keep you going, while the logistics of what keep you going are those micro steps, right? And they probably end up feeling really encouraging in the moment when you start to notice them. Like, this isn't so far off in the future that I can't recognize these tiny little things every day that are getting me closer and closer. And there's nothing more motivating. There's some studies to suggest this, of being able to see our own progress. Just have to train ourselves to be able to do that, because sometimes it's really small. Sometimes
that's why I love journaling, because you can go back and be like, wow, I didn't realize I was just there 4 months ago. But you just said, goes back to belief, right? The belief, and the true belief that you can completely, I'm a testament, completely rebuild your life in a relatively short period of time. And we have the research to back it. And now we have the actual tools to help you get there. But I will say one last thing. We can teach resilience. The one thing we can't teach, at least yet, is grit. And grit is this long time commitment to the process. For me, in 2014, when everything broke open, I made a commitment that my committed focus was going to be on the well-being of my children and making sure I was raising them and getting them lunch, and my career, because it sustained my children. And once I sustained myself, then it was taking this message and moving it on. But it's been, we're going on almost 10 years now. So in full disclosure, it feels like a long commitment.
Yes.
Grit,
passion, and perseverance toward long-term goals. You're pretty gritty, my friend. Let me tell you. Like, I love it. I love seeing it. And I think that, this discussion has been so valuable. I so appreciate the perspective you have on how to apply some of these resilience skills when you're in the vice, and not just when you're at your best, which is so important and such an important conversation. And like Heather is doubling down on in the comments, the belief that no matter what happens to us, we can be in control of how we move forward. That was the very crux of the message of one of our co-founders, Trevor Moawad, right? And that the past is real, but it's not predictive.
When I read that, I wasn't familiar with him until recently. When I read that, I have chills, because it's
exactly
what a core belief.
Yes, but
I
it
don't
doesn't
know
have to
what
predict what
happens.
happens next.
That's right.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to thank everybody that showed up today and commented, and to thank you, Kimberly. This was such a great discussion, and I always love chatting with you, but I'm especially appreciative today of your willingness to go there and give us your story, because it's powerful, and we appreciate you. So thanks for joining us.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. As you know, thanks for having me. And this is awesome. I'm always excited to have these types of conversations.
Of
And
course.
thanks
Well,
for everyone in the chat.
everybody, enjoy your weekend. Thanks for tuning in here to Friends and Family Friday at Limitless Live. Join us again on Monday. We'll be back in the Mind Gym then, and we can't wait to see you. So take care, everybody.